The Saturday morning market in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, had always been my refuge. At 63, I'd learned to find peace in the familiar rhythm of selecting fresh vegetables, exchanging pleasantries with vendors I'd known for decades, and pretending that my life hadn't become a carefully constructed lie I told myself each morning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. My name is Charlene Campbell, and for 2 years, 4 months, and 17 days, I had been telling everyone that my son Logan was traveling for work. International consulting, his wife Georgia explained with practiced ease whenever someone asked. Dubai 1 month, Singapore the next. The modern professional life, she'd say with a tight smile that never quite reached her eyes. I wanted to believe her. Heaven knows I tried. The October air carried that particular crispness that reminded me of apple picking with Logan when he was small. Before my husband Thomas passed, before everything became complicated, I was examining a basket of heirloom tomatoes when I felt someone watching me. Mrs. Campbell! I turned to find a man in his 30s, wearing a delivery company uniform, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. His face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly as he extended the parcel toward me. Yes? I set down my basket, something in his demeanor making my heart quicken. Are you Logan's mother? His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, and he glanced around the crowded market as though afraid of being overheard. I am. My throat tightened. Do you know my son? The man's jaw clenched. For a moment I thought he might simply walk away. Then he pressed the package into my hands with sudden urgency. Then I can no longer keep this, he said, his words tumbling out quickly. I'm sorry. I tried to do what was right, but he backed away, shaking his head. I can't be part of this anymore. The truth matters, Mrs. Campbell. Whatever they've told you, the truth matters. Wait, I called after him, but he'd already disappeared into the crowd, leaving me standing there with the package clutched against my chest, my pulse hammering in my ears. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking too badly to hold the steering wheel. The package sat on the passenger seat, innocuous brown paper concealing whatever had driven a stranger to seek me out with such desperation in his eyes. The truth matters. What truth? What had they told me? I drove the 10 miles to my farmhouse on autopilot, my mind racing through possibilities, each more troubling than the last. The house stood at the end of a long gravel drive, surrounded by 30 acres Thomas and I had bought when we were newlyweds, back when we believed hard work and love could build an unshakable foundation. Inside, I set the package on the kitchen table, the same oak table where I'd fed Logan breakfast before school, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where Georgia had sat across from me 3 months ago and assured me that Logan was simply too busy with his projects to call very often. He emails, though, she'd said, sliding her phone across the table to show me brief messages. See, he's fine, Charlene. Just working hard. I hadn't questioned it. Why would I? Georgia was my daughter-in-law, the mother of my grandchildren, 8-year-old Sophie and 6-year-old Timothy. She had no reason to lie to me. Did she? My fingers fumbled with the string binding the package. Inside, I found a USB drive, a folded letter, and a photograph that made my breath catch. The photograph showed Logan, unmistakably my son, despite the gaunt hollows in his cheeks and the haunted look in his eyes. He stood in front of a concrete wall, holding what appeared to be a dated newspaper, the date visible enough to make out, April 14th of this year, 6 months ago. But it wasn't just Logan's appearance that turned my blood cold. It was the setting, the institutional quality of the background, the way he seemed to be posing reluctantly, as though compelled. This was no international business trip. The letter was handwritten in an unfamiliar scrawl. Mrs. Campbell, my name is Derek Mills. I work for Quick Ship Deliveries, and for the past year, I've been delivering packages to a facility outside Pittsburgh on behalf of your daughter-in-law. I was told not to ask questions, and the money was good, so I didn't. But 3 weeks ago, I made a delivery and saw your son through a window. He looked directly at me, and I saw recognition in his eyes. Not of me personally, but of the outside world, like a prisoner seeing daylight. I started asking questions. I shouldn't have, but I did. What I discovered made me sick to my stomach. The USB drive contained security footage I managed to copy. I don't know what you'll do with this information, but someone in your family needs to know the truth. Your son needs help, and I can't be the one to give it to him. I have a family of my own, and I've been warned about the consequences of interference. I'm sorry I can't do more. I'm sorry I waited this long. The address is on the USB drive. What you do with it is up to you, but please, be careful. There are people invested in keeping this quiet. The letter wasn't signed beyond the typed name, as though he feared even his handwriting might be traced back to him. I stared at the photograph, at my son's hollow eyes, and felt something crack open inside my chest. Not grief, not yet, but a cold, clarifying rage that burned away 2 years of carefully maintained denial. Logan wasn't traveling for work. Logan was being held somewhere, and Georgia knew. My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from Georgia. Can you watch Sophie and Timothy tomorrow afternoon? I have a doctor's appointment. I looked at the message, then back at the photograph in my hand. How many times had I watched my grandchildren while their mother ran mysterious errands? How many times had I accepted her explanations without question, desperate to believe that my family was intact, that my son was simply busy and modern communication made distance feel greater than it was? Another text appeared. Thanks, Charlene. You're the best. I'll drop them off at 2. She hadn't even waited for my response, just assumed I'd comply, the way I always had. I set the phone down carefully, my hand steady now despite the storm raging inside me. The USB drive sat on the table, waiting. I owned a laptop. Logan had given it to me for my birthday 3 years ago, before everything changed. Before he'd supposedly left for Dubai or Singapore, or wherever Georgia claimed he'd gone. I picked up the drive and walked to my study, the small room Thomas had used for farm bookkeeping, now filled with photo albums and memories of a simpler time. The laptop took a moment to boot up, and in that moment of blue screen and whirring processor, I made a choice. I wouldn't confront Georgia. Not yet. I would be what everyone assumed I was. The helpful grandmother, the grieving widow, the woman too old and too trusting to question the stories she was told. But I would find my son, and I would learn exactly what had been done to him. The USB drive contained 6 video files, each labeled with dates spanning the past 14 months. I clicked on the first one, and my farmhouse kitchen appeared on screen. My kitchen, where I sat right now, filmed from an angle that suggested a camera hidden somewhere near the ceiling. The video showed Georgia entering through the back door, using her key, moving directly to the cabinet where I kept important documents. She rifled through them with practiced efficiency, photographed several with her phone, and left within 4 minutes. The timestamp showed this had happened on a Tuesday afternoon last November. I'd been at my book club. The second video showed Georgia in my late husband's study, going through his old files, taking papers I hadn't even known existed. The third showed her in the basement, searching through boxes I'd stored there, pulling out Thomas's will and photographing every page. I watched all 6 videos, each one revealing a pattern of systematic invasion. My daughter-in-law moving through my home like a thief, searching for something, documenting everything. But it was the 7th file, the one labeled simply, "Read me first," that I'd overlooked in my rush to see the footage. I opened it now and found not a video, but a document, a medical report. The patient name at the top read, Logan James Campbell. The facility name, Riverside Extended Care and Rehabilitation Center. The diagnosis made my vision blur. Severe traumatic brain injury resulting in cognitive impairment. Ongoing psychiatric management. Legal guardianship recommended. The date of admission, 2 years, 4 months, and 18 days ago. The legal guardian listed, Georgia Elizabeth Campbell. I sat back in my chair, the laptop screen glowing in the gathering darkness of my study, and understood with sickening clarity what had happened. My son hadn't gone to Dubai. He'd never left Pennsylvania at all. He'd been injured. How, I didn't yet know. And instead of telling me, instead of letting me help, Georgia had hidden him away in some facility, taken legal control of his life, and fed me lies for more than 2 years while she systematically searched my home for something. The question was, what was she looking for? And the more pressing question, what else didn't I know? My phone buzzed again. Another text from Georgia. Actually, can you watch them tonight instead? Something came up. I'll bring them by around 6. I looked at the clock. It was 4:47 p.m. I had just over an hour to hide every trace of what I'd discovered, to compose my face into the mask of the obliging grandmother, and to figure out how to extract information from a woman who'd spent 2 years lying to me while using my grandchildren as leverage. The USB drive went into my pocket. The photograph and letter went into a book on my shelf, Agatha Christie's, and then there were none, appropriately enough. The laptop closed, screen dark, secrets temporarily concealed. I stood and walked to my kitchen. That familiar space now transformed into something sinister by the knowledge that cameras had watched me here, that my privacy had been violated in pursuit of some hidden agenda I didn't yet understand. But I would understand. I would find every answer, because whatever Georgia was searching for, whatever she was hiding, she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated me. She'd assumed that a 63-year-old woman, 2 years widowed and alone, would be too naive, too desperate for family connection, too weak to fight back. She was about to learn otherwise. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m., and I opened it with a smile that felt like broken glass in my mouth, greeting my daughter-in-law and grandchildren as though my entire world hadn't just shattered and reformed into something sharp and dangerous. "Thank you so much, Charlene," Georgia said, already turning to leave. "I'll pick them up in the morning." "Take your time," I replied, watching her walk to her car, watching her drive away. Sophie and Timothy ran past me into the house, their innocent laughter echoing through rooms that held secrets they couldn't imagine. And I closed the door, locked it carefully, and began planning my next move, because the game had started, and Georgia didn't even know I was playing yet. That was my advantage. For now. Sophie wanted to make cookies. Timothy wanted to show me his drawings. And I wanted to scream until my voice gave out, to demand answers from children who had no answers to give, to shake the truth from walls that had witnessed Georgia's intrusions while I'd been oblivious and trusting. Instead, I smiled and said, "Cookies sound wonderful, sweetheart." While the children mixed flour and sugar, I watched them with new eyes. How much did they know? Had they visited their father? Did they ask questions Georgia deflected with the same practiced ease she'd used on me? "Grandma, you're staring," Sophie said, tilting her head with that disconcerting perception 8-year-olds sometimes possess. "Are you sad?" "Just thinking about your grandfather," I lied smoothly, surprising myself with how easily the deception came. He loved chocolate chip cookies. It was true, but it was also a shield, a way to explain any strangeness in my behavior. Grief was acceptable, suspicion was not. After the children were asleep in the guest room, Logan's old room, I realized with a pang, I retrieved the USB drive and studied the medical report more carefully. The facility address was listed, 2847 Riverside Drive, Pittsburgh, 43 miles from my farm. Close enough that Georgia could visit regularly. Close enough that Logan had been within an hour's drive this entire time, while I'd imagined him on another continent. The report was dated 3 days after Logan's supposed departure for Dubai. The attending physician was Dr. Raymond Hartwell. The injury description was vague. Blunt force trauma to temporal region resulting in subdural hematoma, surgical intervention required. But there was no explanation of how the injury occurred. No accident report. No police involvement mentioned. Just a sudden, catastrophic injury and immediate institutionalization. I opened my laptop and searched for Riverside Extended Care. The website showed a pleasant brick building surrounded by manicured lawns, testimonials from satisfied families, accreditation certificates displayed prominently. A private facility, I noted. Expensive. How was Georgia paying for it? Logan had been a successful software engineer, but not wealthy. Their house had a mortgage. Georgia worked part-time as a bookkeeper. The kind of long-term care shown on this website would cost tens of thousands monthly. I checked our family financial history. Thomas had left me the farm and a modest life insurance policy. Enough for comfortable retirement, but nothing extravagant. Logan was our only child. When Thomas died, everything would eventually go to Logan, and then to his children, unless Logan was incapacitated. unless someone else held legal guardianship. The realization hit me like cold water. This wasn't just about hiding Logan. This was about money, about inheritance, about control. I pulled out Thomas's will, the one I kept in my bedroom safe, and read it again with new understanding. The farm, the land, the investments, substantial assets accumulated over 40 years of careful management. If Logan died, or was declared incompetent, and if I passed away, guardianship of Sophie and Timothy would default to their surviving parent. Georgia would control everything. But only if Logan remained hidden. Only if I never knew to contest the guardianship. Only if I died believing my son was alive and well and simply too busy to visit. My hands trembled as I closed the will. How long had Georgia been planning this? Had Logan's injury truly been an accident? Or had something more sinister occurred? And what had she been searching for in my house? What documents did she need? A soft knock on my study door made me jump. Sophie stood in the doorway, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. "I can't sleep, Grandma. Can I stay with you?" I closed the laptop quickly and opened my arms. "Of course, sweetheart." She climbed into my lap, too big for it really. But I held her anyway, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and feeling the weight of her trust. Whatever was happening, these children were innocent. They'd already lost access to their father. I wouldn't let them lose anything more. "Grandma?" Sophie's voice was small against my shoulder. "Is Daddy ever coming home?" The question struck me like a physical blow. "What makes you ask that, honey?" "Mommy says he's working far away, but she says it funny. Like when you told me Grandpa went to heaven and you were trying not to cry." I held her tighter, rage and heartbreak warring in my chest. "Your daddy loves you very much, Sophie. No matter where he is, that never changes. Timothy says Daddy forgot about us." Her voice cracked. "Did he?" "No." I pulled back to look at her directly. "Your father would never forget you. Never." She studied my face with those wise, worried eyes. "You promise?" I made a promise then that I didn't know if I could keep, but I made it anyway. "I promise I'll find out the truth about your daddy. And I promise that whatever happens, you and Timothy will be taken care of. Can you trust me on that?" She nodded, and I held her until she fell asleep, then carried her back to bed and tucked her in beside her brother. In my room, I made a list on a notepad I kept in my nightstand. 1. Visit Riverside facility. Observe. Don't reveal identity. 2. Find out how Georgia is paying for Logan's care. 3. Locate accident or injury records. 4. Determine what Georgia was searching for in my house. 5. Find a lawyer. Quietly. The last item felt dangerous. Georgia would have lawyers. She'd established legal guardianship, which meant a court had approved it. What could I, an elderly woman with no legal expertise, do against someone who'd already built an official case? But I had something Georgia didn't know about. Evidence of her breaking into my home. Video footage of her theft of documents. Proof that whatever she'd told the court, she was hiding something criminal. Sunday morning arrived with autumn sunshine and the sound of Timothy's laughter as he chased squirrels in the yard. Georgia texted at 8 a.m. "Running late. We'll pick up kids at 2 instead of noon. That okay?" "Of course," I replied, and used the extra time to do something reckless. I called Riverside Extended Care and Rehabilitation Center. "Good morning," I said when the receptionist answered. "I'm calling to inquire about visitation policies. My nephew is a resident there and I'm trying to arrange a visit." "Of course," the receptionist replied warmly. "What's the resident's name?" "Logan Campbell." A pause. The sound of typing. Then, "I'm sorry, but Mr. Campbell's file indicates restricted visitation. Only approved family members on his guardian's list are permitted." "I see. And who is his guardian?" "Mrs. Georgia Campbell. If you'd like to be added to the approved list, you'll need to contact her directly and have her submit the authorization forms." "What if there were an emergency? Medical decisions?" Another pause, longer this time. "All medical decisions are made by the guardian in consultation with our medical staff. Is there something specific you're concerned about?" I'd pushed too hard. I could hear the wariness entering her voice. No. Just trying to understand the procedures. Thank you for your time." I hung up before she could ask more questions, my heart pounding. Restricted visitation. All decisions made by Georgia. Logan was completely under her control, cut off from anyone who might question what was happening to him. The doorbell rang at 1:47 p.m. Georgia stood on my porch, perfect as always in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Thank you so much for watching them, Charlene," she said, stepping inside. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "It's always a pleasure." I kept my voice warm, grandmotherly. "Sophie mentioned she misses her father. I told her Logan's working hard but thinking of her." Something flickered across Georgia's face. Calculation, maybe, or concern. "Sophie's been emotional lately. Growing pains, I think. I've been meaning to talk to you about that, actually." We sat at the kitchen table while the children gathered their things. Georgia folded her hands, the picture of concerned motherhood. "Charlene, I know this has been hard on all of us. Logan's absence, I mean. The constant travel." She met my eyes directly, her gaze steady and sympathetic. "I think it might be better if we limited how much the kids talk about him. It just upsets them, and there's nothing we can do to change the situation." "Limited how much they talk about their father?" I kept my tone mild, confused, not accusatory. "Not forever. Just until he's home for a proper visit. Maybe Christmas if the project wraps up." She reached across to pat my hand. "I know you mean well, but bringing him up just makes them sad. We need to help them focus on the present, on the life they have here." The audacity of it stunned me. She was asking me to help erase Logan from his children's daily lives, to normalize his absence, to make his eventual permanent disappearance less shocking. "I understand," I said, because that's what the confused, trusting grandmother would say. "I'll follow your lead. You're their mother." Relief softened her features. "Thank you. I knew you'd understand. You're always so reasonable." The children came downstairs, and Georgia shepherded them toward the door. But as she reached the threshold, she turned back. "Oh, Charlene, I've been meaning to ask. Have you seen any old documents of Thomas's? Financial papers? Maybe some older property records? I'm trying to help Logan sort out some investment questions remotely, and I thought Thomas might have kept copies of certain things." There it was. The real reason for this conversation. "What kind of documents?" I asked innocently. "Anything related to the farm's deed? Maybe trust documents, investment accounts." Thomas was so meticulous about record keeping. I just thought he might have shared information with Logan that could help us now. I'm not sure what I have, to be honest. Thomas handled all that, but I can look if you'd like. "Would you? That would be wonderful." Her smile was bright and false. "No rush, just whenever you have time. Maybe I could come by next week and we could go through things together?" "Of course," I lied. "I'll start looking." She left with the children, and I watched her car disappear down the gravel drive. She was looking for something specific, something she hadn't found in her previous searches of my house, something she needed to complete whatever plan she'd set in motion. I returned to my study and pulled out every document Thomas had left behind. Deed to the farm, investment statements, life insurance policies, his will, bank account records going back decades. What was I missing? What did Georgia think I had? Then I remembered something Thomas had mentioned in passing, years ago, before his health declined. He'd set up what he called a fail-safe, additional documentation kept in a safety deposit box at our local bank, copies of everything important in case of fire or disaster. I'd forgotten about it completely. The key was probably still in his desk drawer where he'd kept it. But if I'd forgotten, maybe Georgia didn't know about it at all. I searched Thomas's desk and found it in the back of the bottom drawer. A small key with a tag reading First National Bank, Box 247. Tomorrow was Monday. The bank opened at 9 a.m. But tonight I had research to do. Because Derek Mills, the delivery driver who'd given me the USB drive, had mentioned being warned about consequences. Someone had threatened him. Someone knew he was asking questions. I opened my laptop and searched for recent news stories in Pittsburgh. Accidents? Incidents? Anything that might connect to Logan or Georgia or the facility. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 months ago, a local reporter named Jennifer Cross had written an article questioning financial irregularities at several private care facilities, including Riverside. The article suggested possible exploitation of incapacitated patients, guardians accessing estates improperly, and institutional complicity in hiding vulnerable adults from family members. The article had been published once, then removed from the newspaper's website within 48 hours. Jennifer Cross had been killed in a hit-and-run accident 2 weeks after the article's publication. The case remained unsolved. I sat back in my chair, the laptop screen glowing in the darkness of my study, and understood that I wasn't just investigating a family deception. I was walking into something far more dangerous than I'd imagined. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with Thomas's old revolver. Unloaded, I wasn't ready to cross that line, and watched the darkness beyond my windows for any sign of movement. If they'd killed a reporter for asking questions, what would they do to an elderly woman who'd discovered their secret? But dawn came peacefully, with birdsong and golden light, and no threats materialized. Perhaps I was being paranoid. Perhaps Jennifer Cross's death had truly been an accident, a tragic coincidence. I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. At 8:47 a.m., I walked into First National Bank carrying Thomas's key and a story I'd rehearsed all morning. The young clerk smiled pleasantly as I approached. "Good morning. I need to access my late husband's safety deposit box. Thomas Campbell, box 247. She checked her computer, asked for identification, and led me to the vault. The box slid out smoothly, heavier than I'd expected. She directed me to a private viewing room and left me alone. Inside the box, I found exactly what Georgia had been searching for. A second will, dated 6 months before Thomas's death, after his cancer diagnosis, but before the treatments that would eventually cloud his thinking. This will was different from the one I'd kept in my safe, the one Georgia had photographed. This version left everything in a trust controlled by me, with specific instructions that Logan must be evaluated by an independent medical board before any inheritance could pass to him. If Logan was found to be incapacitated, the trust would provide for his care, but maintain independent oversight. Georgia would have no access to the funds. There was a letter attached, written in Thomas's familiar handwriting. "Charlene, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I pray you never needed to find this document. But I've learned to trust my instincts, and my instincts about Georgia have troubled me for years. I've noticed things. Small at first. Lies about her work schedule, unexplained money, the way she watches Logan when she thinks no one is looking. Not with love, but with calculation. I changed my will without telling anyone but my lawyer, Henry Rogers. He has the original. This is your copy. If anything happens to Logan, if Georgia tries to control his assets or ours, this document protects him and you. I pray I'm wrong about her. I pray you never need this. But if I'm right, fight for our son. Don't trust the obvious answers, and remember, you are stronger than you know. Thomas." My vision blurred with tears. Thomas had known. Somehow he'd sensed the danger before any of us, and he'd tried to protect us from beyond the grave. I photographed every page with my phone, then carefully returned the documents to the box. This was my insurance policy. Georgia didn't know it existed. The will she'd found and photographed was worthless, superseded by this later version. But I needed to speak with Henry Rogers, Thomas's lawyer. If he had the original, he'd know what legal steps to take. I left the bank and drove directly to Rogers's office in downtown Millbrook. His secretary said he was with a client, but when I mentioned Thomas's name and said it was urgent, she made an exception. Henry Rogers was 71, with kind eyes and a shrewd mind that had guided Thomas through decades of business decisions. He rose when I entered, concern etched across his features. "Charlene, I haven't seen you since the funeral. What's wrong?" I closed his office door and laid out everything, the package from Derek Mills, the videos, the medical report, the discovery of the second will. Henry listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each revelation. "I knew Thomas was worried about something," he said finally. "When he came to update his will, he made me promise absolute confidentiality. He said he hoped he was being paranoid, but he wanted safeguards in place." Henry pulled a file from his cabinet. "The original is here, properly executed and witnessed. It supersedes anything else." Can Georgia contest it? She can try. But Thomas was of sound mind when he created it, and the medical records from that period prove it. More importantly, if what you've told me is true, if she's had Logan institutionalized under false pretenses and claimed guardianship to access his assets, she's committed multiple felonies. Then what do I do? Henry leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. Legally, I can file a petition to challenge the guardianship. But that will take time and will alert Georgia immediately. If she's as dangerous as you suspect, and if there are others involved, moving through official channels could put both you and Logan at risk. So I do nothing? I didn't say that. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a business card. This is a private investigator I've worked with before. Timothy Wright, former FBI. If anyone can uncover what's really happening at that facility and build a case strong enough to protect you both, it's him. I took the card, studying the simple text. Wright Investigations. Discretion guaranteed. I'll need evidence, Henry continued. Not just videos of Georgia in your house, though that helps. I need proof that Logan's guardianship was obtained through fraud. Medical records, witness statements, anything that shows his injury wasn't what she claimed or that his condition doesn't warrant the level of control she's exercised. How do I get that? You don't. Wright does. Let him take the risks, Charlene. That's what you're paying him for. I wanted to argue, to insist I could handle this myself. But Thomas's letter echoed in my mind. Don't trust the obvious answers. The obvious answer was to charge in myself, confront Georgia, demand to see Logan. That's what any desperate mother would do, which meant it was probably exactly what Georgia expected, what she'd planned for. I needed to be smarter than that. I called Timothy Wright from the parking lot. His voice was professional, measured, unsurprised by anything I told him. We arranged to meet at my farm that evening after dark. Driving home, I noticed a silver sedan behind me. It stayed 3 car lengths back, maintaining the exact distance through turns and traffic lights. When I pulled into my driveway, it continued past, but I caught a glimpse of the driver, a man in dark sunglasses, his face turned carefully away. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was seeing threats where none existed. Or maybe I'd been right to fear what would happen once I started asking questions. Timothy Wright arrived at 7:33 p.m. in an unmarked black SUV. He was 50-something, with gray temples and eyes that cataloged everything. My house, the surrounding property, the placement of windows and doors. He moved like someone accustomed to danger. Inside, I showed him everything. The USB drive, the photograph, Derek Mills's letter, the medical report, the videos of Georgia searching my house. This is good, he said, watching the footage. Very good. This shows premeditation, consciousness of guilt. She knew she was doing something wrong. Can you find out what really happened to Logan? I can try, but I need to be honest with you, Mrs. Campbell. If there's an organization behind this, if Riverside is part of a larger operation exploiting incapacitated patients, they'll have lawyers, law enforcement contacts, judges in their pocket, people who make inconvenient questions disappear, like Jennifer Cross. His eyes sharpened. You know about Jennifer Cross? I found her article about financial exploitation at care facilities, including Riverside. Then she died. The police ruled it an accident. Hit-and-run driver never found. He paused. I knew Jennifer. She was a good reporter. Careful. She wouldn't have published that article without solid sources. Do you think someone killed her? I think she got too close to something someone wanted to keep hidden. And I think you need to be very careful because you're walking the same path she did. A chill ran down my spine. Should I stop? Let you handle everything? That would be safer, but I don't think you will. He almost smiled. Thomas told me once that you were the strongest person he'd ever met, that you'd survived things that would have broken other people. Was he right? I thought about the years of Thomas's illness, managing the farm alone, watching my husband fade while maintaining strength for Logan and his family. I thought about burying Thomas and continuing anyway, because stopping meant surrendering to grief. I survived, I said simply. Then we worked together. But we follow my rules. No confronting Georgia. No visiting Riverside alone. No discussing this with anyone except Henry Rogers. If they're monitoring you, and after that car followed you today, I think they are, we use that against them. Let them think you're just a confused elderly woman poking around aimlessly. I saw the car. You think they're watching my house? I swept your property while waiting for dark. No surveillance devices that I could find. But the car is concerning. Could be Georgia hired someone to keep tabs on you. Could be the facility has a security team. Either way, we assume you're being observed and act accordingly. He spent the next hour walking me through what he called operational security, using cash for purchases related to the investigation, never discussing it on my phone or computer, creating innocent explanations for any unusual activity. Tomorrow, I'll start with Riverside, he said. Get a look at their operation, see who's running things, pull financial records. In the meantime, you maintain your normal routine. Garden, visit friends, watch your grandchildren, give them nothing to worry about. After he left, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and tried to process everything. Somewhere in Pittsburgh, my son was locked away, possibly damaged beyond repair, while his wife stole our future and men in silver sedans followed me through town. My phone buzzed. A text from Georgia. Can Sophie have a sleepover at your place Friday? It's her friend's birthday, and I need to work late. I stared at the message, understanding it for what it was. Another test. Another way to keep me compliant. To remind me that access to my grandchildren depended on my cooperation. Of course, I replied, happy to have her. But as I set the phone down, another message appeared. This one from an unknown number. Stop asking questions about Logan Campbell. This is your only warning. My hands went cold. I looked at my windows, suddenly aware of how exposed I was. How easily someone could be watching from the darkness beyond. I forwarded the text to Timothy Wright without responding to the threat. His reply came within seconds. Don't panic. This is expected. They're trying to scare you into backing down. Are you going to? I looked around my kitchen. This room where I'd raised my son, where Thomas and I had built our life. I thought about Logan in some facility, cut off from everyone who loved him. I thought about Sophie asking if her father had forgotten her. No, I typed back. I'm not backing down. Good, Wright replied. Then things are about to get interesting. Stay alert. I'll be in touch tomorrow. I locked every door and window in the house, checked them twice, then sat up in my bedroom with Thomas's revolver, loaded this time, and waited for dawn. But the threat that came wasn't in the darkness. It came the next morning, wrapped in official letterhead. At 9:15 a.m., a courier delivered a legal document. A petition filed by Georgia Campbell requesting a competency evaluation for Charlene Jean Campbell, citing concerns about my mental fitness, my ability to manage my own affairs, and my increasingly erratic behavior. She was trying to have me declared incompetent. If she succeeded, she'd control everything. My assets, my decisions, my ability to fight for Logan. The game had changed, and Georgia had just revealed exactly how far she was willing to go. The competency petition sat on my kitchen table like a coiled snake. I read it 3 times, each reading revealing new layers of calculated cruelty. Georgia claimed I'd been exhibiting signs of dementia, forgetting conversations, misplacing items, making accusations without basis. She'd documented incidents. The time I'd supposedly left the stove on, a lie. The day I'd called her 4 times in an hour, never happened. My increasing paranoia about being watched, which, ironically, was completely true. She'd even obtained a statement from Dr. Patricia Reynolds, my own physician, noting that I'd missed 2 appointments this year and had seemed distracted and forgetful during my last visit. I had been distracted. My husband had died 8 months before that appointment. But Georgia was twisting my grief into evidence of incompetence. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks from now. If the judge sided with her, I'd lose control of my finances, my property, my freedom. I'd become exactly what Logan was, a prisoner of Georgia's guardianship, locked away while she dismantled our lives piece by piece. I called Henry Rogers immediately. I've already seen it, he said grimly. She filed it at 8 a.m. This is aggressive, Charlene. She's moving faster than I expected. Can she win? A long pause. Competency hearings are difficult to predict. The burden of proof is on her, but she's built a circumstantial case. If she brings in a psychiatrist who testifies you're declining, if your doctor expresses concerns, if she presents you as a confused elderly woman making wild accusations about her, I lose everything. We fight back. I'll file a response, demand my own evaluation from an independent psychiatrist, question her motives. But Charlene, you need to be prepared. This hearing will be brutal. She'll say things about you, about your behavior, that will hurt. And you'll need to remain calm and rational throughout, because any display of anger or emotion will be used against you. After hanging up, I sat in silence, feeling the walls of my own home press in around me. Every action I took now would be scrutinized, interpreted as evidence of decline. If I investigated too aggressively, I was paranoid. If I confronted Georgia, I was combative and confused. If I did nothing, I was passive and incapable of managing my affairs. She'd created a perfect trap. My phone rang. Timothy Wright. I'm outside your property line watching your house. Don't react, just listen. There's a white van parked half a mile down your road. It's been there for 3 hours. Could be innocent, could be surveillance. Either way, assume everything you do today is being observed and possibly recorded. She filed for a competency hearing, I said quietly. I know. Henry called me. It changes our timeline. We need evidence fast. Something so damning that her petition collapses under its own weight. I'm going to Riverside today to see if I can get inside. How? I have a cover story. Trust me. But I need you to do something for me. Go through your calendar, your phone records, your credit card statements. Document everything from the past 6 months. Every appointment you kept. Every bill you paid on time. Every coherent conversation you had. Build a counter-narrative showing you're completely competent. I can do that. And Charlene? Be careful. She's escalating because she's worried. That makes her dangerous. I spent the afternoon reconstructing my life on paper. Bank statements showing meticulous financial management. Photos from my garden club meetings. Emails to friends that demonstrated clear thinking and memory. I'd kept a daily planner, and every page showed an organized, capable woman managing her life efficiently. Let Georgia explain away this evidence. At 4 p.m., my doorbell rang. I checked the window and saw a well-dressed woman in her 40s, carrying a briefcase. I opened the door cautiously. Can I help you? Mrs. Campbell, I'm Dr. Sarah Brennan. I've been retained by your daughter-in-law to conduct a preliminary cognitive assessment. May I come in? Every instinct screamed to refuse. But refusing would look like exactly the kind of paranoid, irrational behavior Georgia was claiming. Of course, I said, stepping aside. Though I wish someone had called first. I would have tidied up. The house was spotless. Dr. Brennan would find no evidence of neglect or confusion. We sat in my living room, and she pulled out a folder. This is just a preliminary conversation, Mrs. Campbell. Nothing formal. I understand there's been some concern about your well-being. Concern from whom? I kept my voice pleasant, curious rather than defensive. Your daughter-in-law mentioned you've seemed forgetful lately. Missed appointments, repeated questions, some confusion about dates and events. That's interesting, since I haven't missed any appointments except 2 with Dr. Reynolds last year when my husband was dying, which I rescheduled in advance. As for repeated questions, I'd love to know which ones, since Georgia and I speak perhaps once a week, usually about my grandchildren. Dr. Brennan made a note. You seem quite clear on your schedule. I am. Would you like to see my planner? I document everything. I retrieved it from my desk and handed it to her, watching as she paged through months of neat entries, appointments kept, obligations met. This is very thorough. My husband taught me that. He managed a farm for 40 years. You learn to be organized or you lose money. She asked me standard cognitive questions. What day was it? Who was president? Counting backward from 100. I answered everything correctly, maintaining the persona of a sharp, slightly bemused elderly woman who couldn't understand what all the fuss was about. Mrs. Campbell, may I ask, do you have any concerns about your daughter-in-law? The question was a trap. If I said yes and explained why, I'd sound paranoid. If I said no, I'd validate Georgia's caring narrative. I have concerns about my son, I said carefully. He's been away for over 2 years on a work assignment that keeps getting extended. As a mother, I worry, but Georgia assures me he's fine, so I try to trust her judgment. You must miss him terribly. Every day. But I understand that careers sometimes require sacrifice. My grandchildren miss him too, of course. That's harder to explain to an 8-year-old. Dr. Brennan asked more questions, each one probing for signs of confusion, paranoia, or decline. I answered them all calmly, presenting as exactly what I was, a cognitively intact woman being gaslit by someone with ulterior motives. After an hour, she closed her folder. Thank you for your time, Mrs. Campbell. I'll include my observations in my report. What will you tell Georgia? A slight smile. That's confidential, I'm afraid. But I will say this. You've been very clear and coherent today. Whatever concerns prompted this evaluation, they're not evident in our conversation. After she left, I allowed myself 5 minutes of shaking relief, then called Henry Rogers. She just left. I think it went well, but I can't be sure. Good. I've filed our response to the petition, and I've scheduled you for an independent evaluation next week with a neuropsychologist I trust. We'll build our own case. But Charlene, there's something else. I did some digging into Riverside's ownership structure. And it's complicated. The facility is owned by a shell corporation, which is owned by another corporation, which eventually traces back to a private equity firm called Meridian Holdings. They own 17 care facilities across 4 states, all operating the same way. Upscale, private, very expensive, and almost impossible to get information about their patients. Is that legal? Barely. They exploit loopholes in healthcare privacy laws. As long as the guardian consents, they can essentially lock someone away indefinitely with no outside oversight. There have been complaints filed with the state, but nothing stuck. They have very good lawyers. So Logan is trapped. Unless we can prove the guardianship was fraudulently obtained. That's what Timothy is working on. If he can get evidence from inside Riverside, medical records showing Logan's condition doesn't warrant the restrictions, financial records showing exploitation, we might have a case. That evening, Timothy Wright appeared at my back door just after dark. I let him in quickly, checking to see if the white van was still down the road. It was. I got inside, Timothy said without preamble. He looked shaken, which worried me. Posed as a potential client looking to place my father. They gave me the full tour. Did you see Logan? No. But I saw the setup, and Charlene, it's worse than we thought. That facility isn't just for long-term care. It's a warehouse for people whose families want them hidden. The security is more like a prison than a hospital. Locked wards, cameras everywhere, staff who don't ask questions. Did you find any records? I got photos of patient logs in the administrative office when the tour guide wasn't looking. I'll need time to analyze them, but I saw enough to know they're hiding things. Patients listed as restricted communication with no medical justification. Billing records that don't match reported services. It's a system designed to exploit vulnerable people while their guardians drain their assets. Can you prove Logan doesn't belong there? Timothy pulled out his phone and showed me a blurry photo of a document. This is a copy of his admission assessment. According to this, Logan was admitted with severe traumatic brain injury and aggressive behavior requiring constant supervision. But look at this note from 3 months later. It says he's stable, communicative, and asking to contact family members. That request was denied by his guardian. My chest tightened. He's trying to reach out. He knows something's wrong. The question is, how did he get injured in the first place? The admission report says he fell downstairs at home, but there's no police report, no witness statements, nothing from the ER except a bare minimum trauma record. It's like someone wanted to bury any investigation into how he was hurt. Are you suggesting Georgia hurt him? I'm suggesting the circumstances are suspicious enough to warrant serious questions. Questions that should have been asked 2 years ago but weren't, because someone made sure they weren't. A knock at my front door made us both freeze. Timothy moved to the window and peered out carefully. It's Georgia, he whispered. She's alone. Act normal. I'll slip out the back. He disappeared through my kitchen door as I went to answer the front. Georgia stood on my porch, her expression a mixture of concern and calculation. Charlene, I'm so sorry to drop by unannounced. I wanted to check on you after Dr. Brennan's visit. I know this must all be very confusing. Not confusing at all, I said pleasantly. Dr. Brennan was lovely. We had a nice conversation. George's smile faltered slightly. I'm glad. Listen, I know you might be upset about the competency hearing, but I want you to understand it's coming from a place of love. I'm worried about you. The kids are worried. You've seemed so scattered lately. Have I? I kept my tone mild, grandmotherly. I suppose grief does strange things to memory. I still miss Thomas terribly. Of course you do. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something approximating sympathy. And that's exactly why we need to make sure you're taken care of. The farm is a lot to manage alone. The finances, the upkeep, it's overwhelming for anyone, let alone someone dealing with loss. There it was, the real agenda hidden beneath false concern. The farm is manageable, I said. I've lived here for 40 years. I'm not planning to leave. But what if something happened to you? What if you fell, or got confused, or made a financial mistake? Wouldn't it be better to have someone helping you make decisions? Someone like you? Her eyes narrowed slightly. Someone who cares about you, yes. I appreciate that, but I'm quite capable of managing my own affairs. I smiled warmly, diffusing the tension. Now, was there something else? I was just about to make dinner. Actually, there is one thing. She pulled an envelope from her purse. I need you to sign this. It's just authorization for Dr. Brennan to share her report with the court. Standard procedure. I took the envelope but didn't open it. I'll have my lawyer look at it first. Your lawyer? Something flashed across her face. Surprise? Maybe concern. When did you get a lawyer? Henry Rogers has been our family lawyer for years. You know that. He handled Thomas's estate. Yes, but why would you need him for this? Because legal documents should be reviewed by lawyers before signing. That's just common sense, don't you think? We stared at each other, the mask of familial concern finally slipping. Georgia realized I wasn't the confused, compliant woman she'd expected. I was fighting back. Charlene, she said carefully, I really think you're making this harder than it needs to be. If you'd just trust me. I do trust you. I lied smoothly. With my grandchildren, with your judgment as their mother. But my legal affairs are my own responsibility. I'm sure you understand. She left shortly after, her pleasant facade cracking at the edges, and I watched her drive away before calling Timothy. She knows something's wrong, I said. She came to test me, to see if I'd signed something without reading it. What was it? I opened the envelope. Inside was a medical release form, but the language was broader than standard authorization. It would have given Georgia's lawyers access to all my medical records, including psychiatric evaluations, and allowed them to share those records with the court without my consent. A trap, I said. If I'd signed it, they could have cherry-picked anything in my medical history to support her case. But you didn't sign it. Good. Charlene, we're running out of time. The hearing is in 3 weeks. I need to find irrefutable proof that Logan's guardianship is fraudulent, and I need to do it fast. What can I do? Keep being exactly what you were tonight. Calm, rational, competent. Document everything. And if Georgia pushes you, don't push back. Let her think she's winning right up until we prove she isn't. That night, I lay in bed listening to the old house settle around me, thinking about Logan somewhere in that facility, trying to reach family members who'd been told he was traveling the world. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. Last chance to stop. I deleted it without responding and turned off my phone, because I'd already made my choice. And there was no going back now. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 10 days before the competency hearing, Timothy Wright appeared at my door at 6 a.m. with a woman I'd never seen before. She was perhaps 40, with tired eyes and nervous hands that wouldn't stop moving. Charlene Campbell, this is Rachel Kim. She worked as a nurse at Riverside until 3 days ago. She has something you need to hear. We sat in my kitchen with the curtains drawn. Rachel accepted coffee with shaking hands and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what was happening at first. Riverside seemed like any other facility. Good pay, nice facility, professional staff. But after about 6 months, I started noticing patterns. Certain patients kept there longer than medically necessary. Families told they couldn't visit. Financial records that didn't match the care being provided. "You saw Logan," I said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "Logan Campbell, room 347. I was assigned to his care team for the past year. Mrs. Campbell, your son doesn't belong there. He recovered from his injury within 6 months. He's cognitively intact, physically capable, completely aware of his situation. He asks about his children constantly. He's been trying to contact you for over a year." The words hit me like a physical blow. Why didn't he just leave? Because he's legally committed. The guardianship gives his wife absolute control. She's filed paperwork saying he's dangerous, delusional, a threat to himself and others. None of it's true, but it keeps him locked up. And the facility doesn't question it because they're paid very well to keep him there. How well? $15,000 a month. For care that should cost maybe $4,000. The rest is pure profit, and I'd bet anything most of it's being kicked back to the guardian somehow. It's a system. They target people with assets. Someone gets injured or develops dementia, the family sees an opportunity, and Riverside provides the infrastructure to exploit them while staying technically legal. Timothy leaned forward. How many patients are in similar situations? At least a dozen that I know of. Probably more. The facility director, Dr. Raymond Hartwell, he runs the whole operation. He signs off on whatever the guardians need, medical reports saying patients are incompetent, psychiatric evaluations justifying restrictions, all of it fabricated or exaggerated. "Will you testify to this?" I asked. Rachel's face went pale. "That's why I came to Timothy. I can't testify publicly. Dr. Hartwell has connections, police, judges, prosecutors. The last nurse who tried to report what was happening got arrested on false drug theft charges. It destroyed her career. But over several months, I quietly made copies of key medical notes, billing summaries, and a handful of internal emails, just enough to prove what they're doing without triggering any alerts." She pulled a thumb drive from her pocket and set it on the table between us. "This is everything. But Mrs. Campbell, you need to understand. Using this information will be dangerous. These people don't just destroy careers." Jennifer Cross was asking questions about Riverside. 2 weeks later, she was dead. "I know about Jennifer Cross," I said quietly. "Then you know what you're risking." I picked up the thumb drive, feeling its weight. So small, so innocuous, containing enough evidence to bring down an entire criminal operation. "What happened to my son, Rachel? How did he really get injured?" She met my eyes. "I don't know for certain. The admission report says he fell downstairs, but there were inconsistencies in the injury pattern. Bruising that didn't match a fall. Defensive wounds on his hands. The ER doctor noted concerns about domestic violence but never followed up. Within a few weeks, Mrs. Campbell had guardianship approved, and your son transferred to Riverside. It all happened too fast, too smoothly for something that was supposed to be carefully reviewed." "She pushed him," I said, the certainty settling into my bones like ice. "Or had someone push him, then used his injury to take control of everything." "I can't prove that," Rachel said. "But I can prove he doesn't belong in that facility now. I can prove the guardianship is being maintained through fraudulent medical reports. And I can prove Riverside is complicit in financial exploitation. That should be enough." After Rachel left, Timothy and I spent hours reviewing the documents. Medical assessments from different doctors showing Logan's steady improvement, all contradicted by Dr. Hartwell's reports claiming continued incapacity. Financial records showing the inflated billing. Email exchanges between Hartwell and Georgia discussing how to manage the situation and maintain necessary restrictions. It was damning. It was also potentially inadmissible. Stolen documents, obtained by an employee who'd signed confidentiality agreements. "Henry needs to see this," I said. "We need to figure out how to use it without getting it thrown out of court." Timothy checked his watch. "It's 3 p.m. The hearing is in 9 days. We're cutting this very close." My phone rang. "Georgia," I answered on speaker. "Charlene, hi. Listen, I wanted to give you some news before you heard it elsewhere. I've decided to arrange a video call with Logan for the kids. Next Saturday, before the hearing. I thought you might like to join us. The sudden reversal was shocking. After 2 years of excuses, now she wanted to facilitate contact? That's wonderful, Georgia. The children will be thrilled. But why the change? I've been thinking about what you said. About Sophie missing her father. You were right. They need to see him, even if it's just on screen. And honestly, Charlene, I'm hoping it will help clear up any confusion you might have about his situation. You'll see that he's being well cared for. Or she wanted me to see a drugged, incoherent version of my son to support her incompetence narrative. What time on Saturday? 2 p.m. at my house. Just family, you, me, and the kids. I'll set everything up. After she hung up, Timothy shook his head. It's a trap. She wants you to see him in a compromised state. Maybe record your reaction. Use it as evidence that you're delusional about his condition. Probably. But I'm going anyway. It's the first chance I've had to see my son in over 2 years. I'm not missing it. Then we prepare. You go in knowing she'll try to manipulate the situation. You stay calm no matter what you see. And you don't reveal anything about what we've discovered. The next 9 days passed in a blur of preparation. Henry reviewed Rachel's documents with a medical expert who confirmed that Logan's current condition didn't warrant continued institutionalization. We built a case showing Georgia's financial motive, the inflated care costs, the access to Logan's assets, the systematic search of my home for documents. But the strongest evidence remained problematic. Rachel refused to testify in person, fearing retaliation. Her stolen documents might not be admissible. Everything depended on whether we could introduce enough legitimate evidence to justify a deeper investigation. Saturday arrived cold and gray. I drove to Georgia's house with Timothy, following at a distance in case anything went wrong. The house I'd visited hundreds of times, for birthday parties and holidays, for helping with the kids, now felt like enemy territory. Sophie and Timothy answered the door, their excitement palpable. "Grandma, we get to see Daddy." "I know, sweethearts, I'm so happy for you." Georgia appeared, perfectly composed. "Come in, Charlene. Everything's set up in the living room." The laptop sat on the coffee table, already connected to a video call platform. The children bounced with barely contained energy while Georgia typed something, adjusted the camera angle, and clicked a button. The screen flickered, and there was Logan. My breath caught. 2 years had carved away the man I remembered, leaving someone gaunt and hollow-eyed, sitting in a sterile room with beige walls. But his eyes were alert, aware, desperately searching the screen. "Daddy!" Sophie shrieked, and Timothy climbed onto my lap to get closer to the screen. "Hey, you two," Logan said, his voice rough from disuse but unmistakably him. "Look how big you've gotten." The children talked over each other, telling him about school and friends and everything they'd stored up for 2 years. Logan listened with fierce attention, drinking in every word, his hands pressed against the screen as though he could reach through it. Then his eyes found me. "Mom," he said, and the word broke. "Mom, you're there." "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here. I've been trying—" He stopped, glancing off screen at something or someone. "I've been working so hard, but I miss you. I miss everyone. We miss you too, Logan, so much." Georgia moved subtly, adjusting her position to partially block the camera's view of Logan. "Tell them about your therapy, honey. About the progress you're making." Something flickered across Logan's face. Calculation, resistance, then careful control. He was playing a part, I realized, pretending to be more impaired than he was because that's what kept him safe. The therapy it's helping. Slow progress, but helping. "When are you coming home, Daddy?" Timothy asked. Logan's jaw clenched. "Soon, buddy, as soon as I'm better." "But Mommy says you're very sick. Are you going to die like Grandpa?" "No." The word came out too forcefully, and Logan visibly reined himself in. "No, Timothy, I'm not dying. I'm just healing. It takes time." I watched Georgia watching Logan, saw her satisfaction at his apparent struggle to communicate coherently. This was the performance she wanted. Logan as a damaged man, barely functional, justifying her continued control. But I saw something else. I saw my son signaling with his eyes, trying to communicate something he couldn't say aloud. His right hand moved in small, deliberate gestures, tapping fingers in a pattern I almost recognized. Morse code. Thomas had taught Logan Morse code when he was 12, a father-son project neither of us had thought about in years. I watched Logan's fingers, counting the taps, HELP, then NOTSAFE. My heart hammered, but I kept my face neutral, grandmotherly, just a woman happy to see her son. "You look good, sweetheart. Thinner, but good." Logan's fingers tapped again, TRAP. The call lasted 15 minutes. Georgia ended it with practiced efficiency, promising the children they could call again soon. As the screen went dark, Sophie burst into tears. "Why can't Daddy come home? He seems okay to me." Georgia knelt beside her. "Daddy has to get a little better first, sweetie. These things take time." I held Sophie while she cried, my mind racing. Logan was aware. He knew he was trapped, and he'd just confirmed that Georgia was actively keeping him imprisoned. The question was, what could I do about it with only days remaining before the hearing? The answer came that evening. Henry Rogers called with urgent news. "Charlene, Dr. Brennan submitted her preliminary report. She found no evidence of cognitive decline or incompetence. In fact, she noted you were remarkably sharp and organized for someone supposedly suffering from dementia." That's good, isn't it? It should be. But Georgia's lawyers have now filed for an emergency expedited hearing, claiming you've become increasingly agitated and combative, that you're a danger to yourself. They want the hearing moved up to Monday, 2 days from now. And they've submitted a petition for immediate temporary guardianship pending the full evaluation. Can they do that? They can try. The judge will decide tomorrow if there's enough cause for emergency intervention. Charlene, this is the end game. They're trying to lock you down before we can build our full defense. Then we use everything. Rachel's documents, the evidence of fraud, all of it. We expose what Riverside is doing and prove Georgia's motive. The documents are problematic, but I think I have a better approach. If we can get Logan himself to testify, he can't. Georgia controls whether he can participate in legal proceedings. Not if we can prove the guardianship itself is fraudulent. I'm filing a motion Monday morning to have Logan present at the hearing, to be evaluated by an independent medical professional, and to have his own legal representation. If the judge allows it, if Logan can speak for himself, Georgia's entire case collapses. Will the judge allow it? If we present enough preliminary evidence to raise serious questions about the guardianship, yes. It's a long shot, but it's our best chance. Sunday passed in tense preparation. Timothy delivered Rachel's documents to Henry, who worked with his legal team to determine what could be used and how. The medical expert prepared a counter-report. We assembled a timeline showing Georgia's systematic deception, her financial motive, her pattern of isolating Logan from anyone who might question the narrative. At midnight, Henry called one final time. The judge has scheduled an emergency session for 9 a.m. Monday. Both petitions will be heard. Georgia's request for immediate guardianship over you and our motion regarding Logan. Charlene, you need to be perfect tomorrow. Calm, rational, articulate. Everything depends on the impression you make. I understand. And one more thing. Timothy found something. Derek Mills, the delivery driver who gave you the initial package, he was found dead this afternoon. Single car accident on Route 22. Police are calling it a tragic loss of control on a wet road. The room tilted. They killed him. We can't prove that, but the timing is suspicious. Charlene, these people are desperate. Tomorrow, when you walk into that courtroom, you're walking into a fight for your life and Logan's. Are you ready? I thought about Thomas's letter, about his faith in my strength. I thought about Logan's fingers tapping out desperate messages while his wife controlled every aspect of his existence. I thought about Sophie asking if her father had forgotten her. I'm ready, I said. Because I'd spent 2 years being the confused, compliant widow, the oblivious grandmother, the woman everyone underestimated. Tomorrow, Georgia would discover her mistake. Tomorrow, I would show her exactly what a mother would do to save her son. And heaven help anyone who stood in my way. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. wood-paneled and austere, with fluorescent lights that turned everyone's skin a sickly yellow. I arrived at 8:45 a.m. with Henry Rogers, both of us carrying briefcases filled with evidence that might not be admissible, but represented the truth nonetheless. Georgia sat across the aisle with her legal team, 3 lawyers in expensive suits, their faces radiating professional confidence. She'd dressed carefully for this, projecting concerned family member rather than calculating predator. When our eyes met, she offered a sad, sympathetic smile that made my skin crawl. Judge Catherine Walsh entered at precisely 9 a.m. She was 60-something, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd reviewed the preliminary filings, Henry had told me, and was known for her intolerance of manipulation. That was our only advantage. "This is an unusual situation," Judge Walsh began, looking between both parties. 2 connected petitions, one seeking guardianship over Charlene Campbell, and one challenging the existing guardianship of her son, Logan Campbell. I'm going to hear arguments on both matters before making any decisions. Mrs. Georgia Campbell, your petition first. Georgia's lead attorney, a polished woman named Patricia Vance, rose smoothly. Your Honor, we're here today because of serious concerns about Mrs. Charlene Campbell's declining mental capacity. Over the past several months, she's exhibited increasingly erratic behavior, forgetting appointments, making unfounded accusations against family members, displaying paranoia about being watched or followed. She presented the fabricated evidence methodically, the supposed missed appointments, the claimed repeated phone calls, Dr. Reynolds' statement about my distraction during visits. Mrs. Campbell has been under tremendous strain since her husband's death, Vance continued. We believe she's suffering from early-stage dementia complicated by grief-induced delusions. She's made claims that her daughter-in-law is searching her home, that her son is being held against his will, that there's some vast conspiracy. These are not the statements of a woman capable of managing significant assets and property. Judge Walsh turned to me. Mrs. Campbell, how do you respond? I stood, keeping my voice level and clear. Your Honor, I understand how my concerns might sound to someone unaware of the full context, but everything I've claimed is documented and true. My daughter-in-law has been entering my home without permission and photographing private documents. My son is not traveling for work as claimed. He's been institutionalized at Riverside Extended Care for over 2 years. And there is indeed a conspiracy, though perhaps not as vast as they want you to believe. Just methodical, calculated, and criminal. Vance smiled indulgently. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of paranoid fantasy. I have video evidence, I said calmly, of my daughter-in-law systematically searching my home, taken from security cameras she didn't know existed. The courtroom went silent. George's face drained of color. Henry stood. Your Honor, if I may present Exhibit A? Judge Walsh nodded and Henry set up a laptop. The courtroom watched as Georgia appeared on screen, entering my kitchen with her own key, moving directly to my document cabinet, photographing papers, and leaving. The timestamp was clear. The footage was damning. This occurred last November, Henry explained. Mrs. Charlene Campbell has 6 similar videos showing her daughter-in-law entering her home without explicit permission and going through private documents. This isn't paranoia. This is documentation of actual breaking and entering. Georgia leaned to whisper urgently with her lawyers. Vance recovered quickly. Your Honor, Mrs. Georgia Campbell has a key to her mother-in-law's home. She was checking on the property, concerned about Charlene's welfare. Then why photograph financial documents? Judge Walsh asked sharply. Why not simply call or visit openly? She was trying to help Charlene organize. Without asking? Without Charlene's knowledge or consent? The judge's skepticism was evident. Continue, Mr. Rogers. Henry presented the medical report showing Logan's institutionalization, the timeline of Georgia's deceptions, and the financial analysis showing how the guardianship benefited Georgia. Then he dropped the critical motion. Your Honor, we're requesting that Logan Campbell be brought before this court to testify regarding his own guardianship. We have evidence suggesting he's been held in Riverside under false pretenses, that his condition has been misrepresented, and that he's cognitively capable of participating in these proceedings. Vance objected immediately. Your Honor, Logan Campbell is severely impaired. Dr. Raymond Hartwell has submitted extensive documentation. Documentation we believe is fraudulent, Henry interrupted. We have a competing medical assessment from a nurse who worked directly with Mr. Campbell, stating he's cognitively intact and has been trying to contact family for over a year. This supposed nurse violated patient confidentiality and stole medical records, Vance countered. Any testimony from her is inadmissible. Then let's hear from Logan Campbell himself, Judge Walsh said decisively. I'm ordering that he be transported here for evaluation by a court-appointed psychiatrist before we reconvene. This matter is adjourned until tomorrow at 2 p.m. to allow time for his arrival and assessment. George's composure finally cracked. Your Honor, that's completely unnecessary. My husband is in a fragile state. Transporting him, subjecting him to this stress. Mrs. Campbell, if your husband is as impaired as you claim, a psychiatric evaluation will confirm that. If he's not, then we have significant questions about this guardianship. Either way, I will hear from him directly. Court is recessed. The gavel fell with a sound like thunder. In the hallway outside, Georgia cornered me, her mask of concern completely gone. What do you think you're doing, Charlene? You're going to destroy this family. I'm saving my son. That's what mothers do. Logan is exactly where he needs to be. You have no idea what you're interfering with. Then explain it to me. Tell me the truth for once. She laughed, a bitter sound. The truth? The truth is that Logan was never good enough. Not smart enough, not ambitious enough, not successful enough. He was content with his mediocre job and his mediocre life, and he was going to waste everything Thomas built. The night he went down those stairs, she stopped, choosing her words more carefully, as if she'd already said too much. When you pushed him, I said quietly. When he fell, she repeated coldly. I saw an opportunity, a chance to protect my children's inheritance from his incompetence, to make sure they'd have the life they deserved. Everything I've done has been for Sophie and Timothy. You're using them as leverage while stealing their father. I'm securing their future. Something you and Thomas should have ensured instead of leaving everything so vulnerable. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something dangerous. You should have signed what I needed you to sign. You should have stayed confused and compliant. Now you've forced me to take steps I didn't want to take. Is that a threat? It's a reality. You think that judge is going to believe some wild story about conspiracy and fraud? You think they'll trust a grieving widow over documented medical evidence? I have lawyers, Charlene. I have doctors. I have resources you can't imagine. And when this is over, you'll be declared incompetent. Logan will stay exactly where he is, and I'll have control of everything. Timothy Wright appeared from around the corner, his phone held up, recording every word. George's face went white. You're recording this? That's illegal. Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state, Timothy said calmly. Only one person in a conversation needs to know it's being recorded. That would be me. And you just confessed to pushing your husband down the stairs and orchestrating this entire fraud. Georgia turned and fled down the hallway, her lawyers rushing after her. When court reconvened at 2 p.m., Logan was there. He sat in a wheelchair. Unnecessary, I would learn later. Just another way Riverside portrayed him as helpless. Flanked by 2 attendants. But when he saw me, his eyes cleared with recognition and desperate hope. The court-appointed psychiatrist, Dr. Michael Torres, had spent an hour evaluating him. His report was brief and devastating to George's case. Your Honor, Logan Campbell is cognitively intact. He understands his situation fully, can communicate clearly, and shows no signs of the severe impairment described in his institutional records. In my professional opinion, he does not require guardianship and should be allowed to speak on his own behalf. Judge Walsh turned to Logan. Mr. Campbell, do you understand why you're here? Yes, Your Honor. Logan's voice was stronger than during the video call, steadier. I understand my wife petitioned for guardianship claiming I was incompetent. I understand she's been controlling my life for over 2 years, and I understand she's now trying to do the same thing to my mother. Tell me what happened the day you were injured. Logan took a breath. My wife and I were arguing about money. She wanted access to my trust fund, money my father left me with specific restrictions. I refused. She got angry. physical. We struggled near the top of the stairs. She pushed me. I fell. Why didn't you tell anyone this when you were admitted? I was confused at first from the head injury. By the time I was clear-headed enough to understand what was happening, she'd already established guardianship. I tried to tell the staff at Riverside, but Dr. Hartwell dismissed it as post-traumatic confusion. I tried to get messages out, but all my communication was monitored. I was completely trapped. Georgia's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is a classic example of confabulation. False memories created by brain injury. He remembers, I said, standing. He remembered enough to use Morse code to signal me during our video call yesterday. Thomas taught him that code 20 years ago. That's not confabulation. That's a desperate man using whatever tools he had to reach his family. Judge Walsh studied Logan for a long moment. Mr. Campbell, do you want this guardianship to continue? No, Your Honor. I want my life back. I want to see my children. I want to go home. The judge turned to Georgia, who sat rigid and pale. Mrs. Campbell, I'm terminating the guardianship effective immediately. Mr. Campbell will be released from Riverside today, and you will be investigated for guardianship fraud, financial exploitation, and quite possibly attempted murder. As for your petition regarding Charlene Campbell, she looked at me with something approaching respect. Mrs. Campbell has demonstrated exceptional clarity, organization, and rational thinking throughout these proceedings. Your petition is denied and dismissed with prejudice. The gavel fell again, and this time it sounded like freedom. The aftermath came in waves. Georgia was arrested that evening on multiple charges. The investigation into Riverside expanded rapidly once Logan's case broke open the doors. Dr. Hartwell and 3 other staff members were eventually charged with conspiracy to commit fraud. 12 other patients were identified as being held under similarly fraudulent circumstances. Rachel Kim, the nurse who'd risked everything to help us, received immunity in exchange for her testimony. The documents she'd stolen became the foundation for prosecutions that would take years to complete fully. Derek Mills's death was investigated as a homicide. No charges were filed. There wasn't enough evidence. But his family received closure knowing he'd helped expose the conspiracy before he died. Logan moved back home with Sophie and Timothy. The reunion was painful and joyful in equal measure. The children were confused, angry at their mother, grieving the loss of the family structure they'd known. But they were healing, supported by therapy and by Logan's patient presence. Physically, Logan had recovered from his injury with minimal lasting effects. Emotionally, the trauma of 2 years of imprisonment would take longer to heal, but he was free, and that was everything. 6 months after the hearing, Logan and the children moved to the farm with me. The house that had felt so empty after Thomas died filled with life again. Children's laughter, family dinners, the sound of my son's voice reading bedtime stories to Sophie and Timothy. We worked the land together, Logan taking over much of the physical labor while I managed the business side. It was healing for both of us. This return to the earth, to the rhythms of planting and harvest that had sustained our family for 40 years. One evening in early autumn, almost a year after Derek Mills had handed me that package at the market, I sat on the porch watching Sophie and Timothy chase fireflies across the lawn. Logan settled into the chair beside me. I never thanked you properly, he said quietly, for not giving up, for believing me when you couldn't even talk to me. You're my son. Giving up was never an option. A lot of mothers would have believed Georgia, accepted the easy explanation. You fought for me. I took his hand, feeling the calluses from farm work, the strength returning to his grip. Your father prepared me for this, in his way. He knew something was wrong. He made sure I'd have the tools to fight back when the time came. I miss him. So do I. But he'd be proud of you, Logan, of how you survived, of how you're rebuilding your life. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the children play, the farmhouse glowing warm behind us. This place that had been a target, a prize to be seized and exploited, was once again simply home, secured not through legal machinations or control, but through family, truth, and the quiet strength of refusing to surrender. Georgia was convicted and sentenced to 15 years. I felt no satisfaction in that. only sadness for the children who'd lost their mother to her own greed and cruelty. But Sophie and Timothy were resilient, supported by therapy and love, learning that family wasn't defined by perfection, but by those who showed up, who stayed, who fought for each other when it mattered most. On the mantel in my living room, I kept Thomas's letter in a frame, his faith in my strength, his warning about trusting obvious answers, his final gift of protection from beyond the grave. Beside it, I placed the photograph Derek Mills had given me, the one showing Logan in that institutional room, holding that dated newspaper. I kept it as a reminder that the truth matters, that age doesn't mean weakness, that a 63-year-old widow, underestimated and dismissed, could bring down a criminal conspiracy through patience, intelligence, and the refusal to accept comfortable lies. I kept it as a promise to myself. I would never again be the woman who accepted stories without questioning, who prioritized peace over truth, who assumed that family connections guaranteed good intentions. The world had shown me what happened when you stopped paying attention, when you trusted blindly, when you let others define your reality. I wouldn't make that mistake again. And as I watched my son laugh with his children, as I felt the solid permanence of the farmhouse at my back and the land stretching out around us, I understood something Thomas had known all along. Wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about asking the right questions. Strength isn't about overpowering others. It's about standing firm when others expect you to break. And victory isn't always loud or celebrated. Sometimes it's simply this: family restored, truth revealed, a home reclaimed from those who would have stolen it. Sometimes victory is silence after the storm, peace hard won, and the knowledge that you fought for what mattered and won. That was enough. That was everything. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.